working with right now. So let's take a look first at the discussion boards and how to go about doing this in the proper way. So the point is with these discussion boards is that there's certain standards that I need to measure, the listening and speaking standards, and the problem is you're online. So the only way that we can really do this is to actually use these discussion boards. So let me explain further what those discussion guidelines are, and we can hopefully give you some examples. And I've taken examples from the different classes. So there's a lot represented: sophomore, junior, senior. So don't worry so much about what it's talking about. Look at how it's done. The first thing is when you do respond initially, you want to show your answer, not just tell it. It's one thing to have an opinion, but you really are trying to persuade somebody that your opinion is right. So take a look at this first example. I really like this one because it offered um, 2 or 3 examples and really made the point. This one happened to be about persuasion and the different ways that it's done. So I specifically think of an episode of Futurama where a commercial opposing proposition infinity affairs, and a mother says something to the effect of, "Think of what would happen to the children. We couldn't think of any. So you think of them for us." And she goes on to kind of analyze how that applies to the point she's trying to make. And then she gives another example. So this is what you want to do. You want to show how you're processing the information and why you're thinking what you're thinking. So after you've made that initial posting, then it's time to respond to at least 2 people. And one thing I want you to do with that is uh, when you go through the posts, make sure to try and hit everybody so that everybody has at least 2 posts. So if you see that somebody's already received 2 responses, go to the next one, the next one, the next one, until you find somebody who hasn't had 2 responses yet. That kind of evens everything out for everybody, and that first person isn't being bombarded with all of these comments. Now, in terms of adding responses, this is not going to cut it. Yep, I agree. Or, "You stated that very well." Or, "I like how you worded that." By themselves, these are not helpful. I know they're meant to encourage, but you wouldn't, if somebody were in a conversation, they kept saying, "Yeah, I agree, I agree, I agree, I agree." You kind of look at them weird. So here's what you want to do instead. There's 3 different ways that you can approach this discussion board. The first one is to add a new example. I love how this one has been worded because it does agree, but it explains it in a slightly different way. It's adding a new example. "I agree with your third statement. The concepts are all around us without even noticing it." Here's where the examples are. We see it on television, billboards, and people use it against us to argue or make us want something. For example, advertisements are on your phone, television, and in our computers every day. Seeing them, we are bound to want something. They affect our decisions. So you've got examples, specific examples. That "for example" phrase is so important, especially when it's on these discussion boards. And try and add it from a different point of view. What haven't they thought about? Or here's something that happened to me that's very similar. So adding a new example is a really good response on a discussion board. The second type is asking a clarifying question. And this example actually was in response to something I wrote, and I loved it. I loved getting this question. This person said, "You said that you like being around happy people, but do happy people who are unhappy," sorry, let me start that again. "You said that you like being around happy people, but do people who are unhappy make you happy the same way the other group does? Or does their negative demeanor bring you down with them?" I really had to stop and think about it, and uh, it, I did respond to it. So it's continuing that conversation and making me think deeper about my response. So I really appreciated that. And those clarifying questions can be helpful to the person who has responded, because then they can figure out, yeah, how am I thinking about this? The other way to respond to another student is to offer counter argument. These are fun because if you disagree, uh, that's always a good thing in an argument, right? You can't have a lot of people agreeing. This one was written so well. A great point you're making. However, you can't just lower the prices. There are a lot of variables that go into the pricing of foods, i.e. labor, water, packaging, etc. You'd have to take into account that farmers are struggling here in America. Until people start becoming aware of the foods they're intaking and there develops a higher demand for healthier alternative, we can't lower the prices. This is so well constructed for a counter-argument response, finding the point of agreement and then bringing in what that counter-argument is, bringing in the specific examples of the point, and then just kind of wrapping it up in the argument. This is a perfect construction for a counter argument response, and so that's something you want to strive for. Okay. Now, remember that if you add a comment after I've given you the grade, Canvas will not tell me that you've added the another response. So if you need something regraded, message me. Just say, Mrs. Campbell, can you go back and look at number 1.1.2? I've added some responses, and I will be happy to do that. So those are the discussion boards. And if you're having any other questions, please message me or call, because these are super important when it comes to this coursework. Okay, the other thing we've been working on is making predictions. And every time that we're going, this whole module, first thing we do is we start making predictions on whatever it is you're going to read.